Welcome to Is Anybody Listening to Me podcast with Azar and the Meat. This is our special New Year edition. We took a little bit off for the holiday New Year. Now we're back. We're excited. We had a chance to dive into Wonder Woman 84, binge watch Cobra Kai, and we're here to talk and rant about it. Let me bring in my partner quickly, Big Meat. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Azar. Finally, 2020 is over. I'm happy just to say that.
Yeah, we're still in quarantine.
2021. That's right.
Nothing's really changed.
That's the belief from a lot of people. They say, 2020, you can't wait till it's over. And as if now that it's 2021, that everything's just going to go back to normal. Like, no, it's just, just a number. Carries over.
But it is better because we have new content, like there's stuff to entertain us. Like last time when the lockdown began, I feel like everything froze and we were kind of like stuck in limbo. But now we got the NFL playoffs kicking off. We just finished a fantasy season, which no one thought was going to be possible to complete a fantasy season.
Mm-hmm. That alone makes me happy that it's over.
Yeah, and then we have a movie, a relevant movie, hit the big screen and streaming through HBO Max. So we get to review that, which is going to be exciting. But before we go into that, we always start off. We talk about alcohol because we have a problem, but you're in lockdown. I think it's important to know what options are out there. And this is an interesting topic I wanted to discuss with Big Meat because I was on vacation for the holidays. And I made a point to make sure I got up one morning and make myself a Bloody Mary. Because I love Bloody Marys. But what I struggle with is with that drink, why do we always reserve it for just the morning? How did it get pigeonholed? It's just a morning drink. You buy a bottle of mix, you get excited about it, and now you're stuck with the mix and you're trying to find, because you can't drink every morning if you have kids. It's impossible to drink every morning. So I'm looking at my bottle and I'm like, I'm going to make one tonight. So I'm having a Bloody Mary for this podcast tonight. But it got me thinking, I really like Bloody Marys. And I remember in college, we loved drinking Bloody Marys, especially on special occasions back in college. But it feels like it's fallen off the map. And I don't know what your thoughts on it. What happens?
I don't have much to offer here because I'm not a fan of Bloody Marys. I don't like the tomato juice drink. I've had a few, but none of them have been at night. Or you're right, they're a morning drink. It's like the morning drink after a night of booze. It's like the hangover cure, right?
Yeah.
Although I don't know if it's really so much a cure than just like have a Bloody Mary when you're hungover. I don't know if it really helps all that much, but I'm not a fan of them. So it's not. I don't think I've had one. Maybe, it's probably been like 15 years, maybe even 20 years.
Wow.
I haven't had one since then. Yeah, I'm
not
a big fan of them.
You never order them when you're on vacation?
No.
Wow.
No.
I thought when we were in Nashville, I thought you ordered one with us. No.
No.
Oh, wow.
Nope,
okay.
Wasn't me. No, I like to stick to my whiskey.
All right. Well, see, that's the interesting thing with Bloody Marys. And so that's what I wanted to talk about, is that I think a lot of people don't appreciate, they have it in college and it's made the cheap way. You buy this cheap mix, or they buy V8 juice and say, you got to buy a quality Bloody Mary mix. Okay. And I'm going to recommend one because I found one. There's one brand that they actually sell in Hannaford that I actually do like, and it's actually organic, and it's called Agalima, Agalima. So if you like Bloody Mary, it's an organic Bloody Mary mix. It's got good flavor. They have one that's mild, like just not a regular tomato juice mix. Then they have a spicy one. The spicy ones are really good, but I bought a mild one because I drank it over the holiday with the wife, and she doesn't like the spicy stuff. So I'm just recommending, if you've fallen out and haven't had a Bloody Mary in a long time, find a quality mix. And I think the brand, I'm trying to remember the name of the brand, but I think it's called Stonewall Kitchen is the brand that is from Portsmouth. They actually sell them in the New Hampshire liquor stores. They make a really good mix. It's not organic, if you care about that, but they actually sell a really good mix. So if you haven't revisited a Bloody Mary in a long time, I recommend it. And the reason I'm talking about it is because I'm getting excited for next season in the NFL. And it got me thinking, like when you tailgate, we always if you're tailgating for a 1 o'clock game, what do you drink, right? You always go in and start opening up beers. And I'm wondering, why haven't we actually tailgated and kicked off our mornings with Bloody Marys. So that's my recommendation. I think next year, it's my goal is I'm going to get everybody drinking Bloody Marys before the tailgate instead of cracking it. Because something about a beer and like it's not a good marathon. I mean, I think Bloody Mary is a better marathon drinking booze than starting to chug beers at like 10:30 in the morning when you're trying to have a breakfast. Like if you're going to have like a boot meal sandwich or an egg sandwich, do you really want a beer with it, or do you want like more of a delicious?
Now you're speaking my language when you said the boot meal sandwich. That's. But I like your confidence, Azar. You're saying that you're going to try to get everybody to drink Bloody Marys when we tailgate next. You're going to get me to drink a Bloody Mary?
I'm going to find it. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to figure out how to make it. But I've seen, like, when you go to, like, some fancy, when you travel on vacations, I've seen them do this. They put candied bacon inside the Bloody Mary. Like, they put all, like, this garnish in it that, like, you have to have the right olives. You have to have the right obviously it has the celery stalk. Everybody knows that. But I saw people putting candied bacon in it, and it's just phenomenal. So we're gonna get creative. I'm gonna bring it back because this again we did the Manhattan conversation. Everybody said, "Oh, that's an old man's drink," and we try to dispel that theory. I want to say, if you haven't been drinking a Bloody Mary, or maybe you're just limiting it, and you're like, I'm saying, revisit it. It's a really refreshing drink. I'm just bringing it back.
All right. Hey, you might sell me on it. I mean, I'm willing to try it. Azar, you know me. I'm willing to give it a shot. You sound like a man of conviction, so I'm.
Yeah, and it's such a simple drink to make with so much flavor. It perks you up, and I'm telling you, for a long tailgating day, Bloody Mary is the way to start. Okay. I think my mission is to start every tailgate next season when we get to go back to football games. Instead of cracking open a beer, we're going to be mixing some Bloody Marys to kick off football Sunday. That's my mission. So this will be revisited. This is just a taste of Bloody Mary. So we will be discussing this further.
This, of course, is you're basing this entirely on if we actually can still tailgate this next season.
I am confident we will be tailgating back again.
Okay,
I'm that confident we'll be back to tailgating.
All right.
And you'll be loving the Bloody Mary again.
All right. Well, you know what? If we can tailgate again and actually go to another Patriots game again, or any game for that matter, I will drink a Bloody Mary in celebration of the comeback, of the tailgating comeback.
Yeah,
I'll do it for you.
And if they don't screw it up, I'd love it if they can make opening game, like opening Sunday, because the Patriots stunk, so they're not going to be like the primetime game. We know that for sure. But if they can make the opening weekend, Tampa Bay versus the Patriots, then we'll definitely be celebrating for that game. The return of Tom Brady back to Gillette as a Buccaneer.
I like it.
That'll be the game that we're going to definitely need some marathon drinking in preparation for. All right. Now what everybody's been waiting for. Everybody wants to know, and even my son made a comment about it the other day we were talking. He called me Mr. Negative. He goes, all you do is you're a negative reviewer on your podcast. And I said, that's not true. We actually praise things that are appropriate.
Yeah, I thought we hyped up the Mandalorian quite a bit.
He did, but he knows. He knows I've been itching for this podcast, and the topic is Wonder Woman 84.
Get angry Azar is going to come out.
Yeah, and the hammer is going to come down on probably the worst DC comic movie ever made. I think it makes Ben Affleck like a premier actor, or the best Batman that ever lived.
Yeah, at least you didn't say Nicolas Cage, so it can't be half of that.
No, but you mentioned Nicolas Cage, you bastard, and you know how much that makes my blood boil. I get emails from Netflix that tell me, hey, you might like this series coming out, or this docu-series or whatever. So I'm like, it says, hey, Azar, a docu-series you might like. So I open it up, and I'll say, I wonder what it's all about. Nicolas Cage is hosting a docu-series. And I'm like, delete. Like, no, thank you. I already know it sucks. So just for the sidebar.
Oh, man. And there's a tie-in to Wonder Woman with Nicolas Cage that I read. Something about that as well, too.
Oh, enlighten me.
So I'm in full agreement, Azar. I'm going to take it another step even further. Wonder Woman 1984 might be the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. It might be the worst. Not just the worst DC movie. It might be the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. It was that bad. I hated it. I couldn't wait for it to be over. You know what the best scene in Wonder Woman was? The
Then,
first scene, the opening scene, the
oh
opening
yeah,
scene.
yep.
Like, and we're gonna go, all out spoilers here. So if you're listening and you haven't watched it, we'll just warn you right now, whether you watched it or not. Like, just don't even bother.
Yeah.
Don't bother watching it. Just listen to our accurate review of the movie, and that's all you need. All you need to hear. It was definitely the worst DC movie out there. The opening scene actually got me excited. I was watching it when she was, was a little girl there, and she was running through that kind of Olympic style, trials or whatever they were doing. And I said, "Oh, this is actually kind of neat. I like the action. It was fast paced, and it just went completely downhill after that." But before I forget, I do want to tie in the Nicolas Cage reference. So the villain, who I know you love so much, actually both the villains in it, but the guy that actually plays Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal is
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
Who was he was completely over the top in it, right? I mean, he was kind of like he was almost kind of played like a schizophrenic in the movie, kind of like a little crazy. He was interviewed one time saying that he tried to emulate Nicolas Cage as an actor in that role he was playing. I said, that's why Azar hated him so much. I said, now looking back, I'm like, that's right. They could have put Nicolas Cage in that role. Like, he could have played that part.
The worst. So that, for everybody that knows me, and just those words alone, now you understand how terrible of a movie it was, because the lead villain was so over the top bad. Like, he was overacting. Like, he was better to put a helmet on his head and not be
Yeah.
seen like the Mandalorian and only say a few words, and that would have made a better movie. I didn't understand his character. I didn't understand what he was trying to accomplish. It was so bizarre and rampant.
And I think he's a good actor. Like, he was great in
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. I
Yeah.
thought he was awesome in Game of Thrones. This role, I think it was just he wasn't cast correctly. He wasn't the right person to play that part.
So the story was written so poorly, and we'll go on a tangent more on Gal Gadot, because how they screwed up her character is amazing to me. But from a villain, like, every good movie needs a solid villain. And I was actually just watching Spider-Man Homecoming, and Michael Keaton was the Vulture in it. And I looked at it and I was like, he was such a good villain in that. And I thought he made the movie as the villain. Like, he was such a believable villain that you enjoyed it, right? When you watched Wonder Woman 84, I didn't understand this guy and what he was trying to accomplish. I didn't understand where he was going with the story. He was whiny. He wasn't like this powerful villain. And the way I just didn't understand the writing behind it. It just made no sense at all. Like,
Yeah.
it just
The only thing I could think of was that he was consumed by greed. Like, he just wanted more and more. He wanted to become like the most powerful person. But I don't understand how he got to that point. Like, how did he know that piece that he was using?
Yeah.
Like, how did he come about that? Like, I don't know if they explained that. Like, he just kind of was like, oh, I want this so I could get people's wishes and then kind of trade, make people wish for something, and I could trade. Isn't it like, do you watch Lucifer? Isn't Lucifer's kind of like the same concept there? Like, he makes people wish for something, and then as like Lucifer, as the devil, like, he basically gets something from them back. It's kind of a similar plot point there, right?
Well, the classic myth or the storyline of the genie. The genie was always, like, we know it from Aladdin, as like this lovable genie, but genies were written as actually evil and mischievous. You make a wish and it actually always backfired you. So this stone was almost like this weird genie stone where it granted wishes, and he just like Jafar from Aladdin wanted all the wishes, so he made himself the genie.
Yeah.
It was just.
But how did this guy know that? How did he know this was the stone that would let it? Like, how did he?
He watched Aladdin and just said, "Hey, that must make sense.
Like,
I want more wishes." So,
bizarre.
I absorbed the stone, and and I was talking to my wife about what I didn't understand in the first movie. Gal Gadot said the main villain, Wonder Woman said the main villain was driven by this Ares, this god. It was a god of war, and eventually the god of war came out, and she had to battle the god of war. So the stone was meant. It was actually she even referenced it was this evil god of mischief. He was like the Loki in basically the Amazonian reference. He was like Loki, this mischievous god. And I, for the whole time, was thinking, like Wonder Woman, the first one, that the god was eventually going to kind of like rip up and like come out of the guy and just expose himself. And she had to battle like this godlike demon that was causing all this mischief. But it never happened. It just happened to be this guy. There was this loser guy that wanted more greed and power, and that loved his son. Which the ending with his son was the corniest.
It was just so sad.
So I didn't understand like why. Like I thought like all right, if that guy came out and the god creature came out of him, and exposed himself and was the reason for all the mischief, that would have made for an epic battle scene. But it never happened. It was like this cheesy.
Yeah. It was like everybody could redeem themselves. Like, like did anybody
everybody in the world redeemed himself, which was amazing. Like how that happened.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I know. Everyone's like,
world.
It's like, okay, I'll take back my wish, or what they call it. I will whatever it was. It was basically like give back the wish. So like they could reverse everything. You're right. Everybody in the world was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. It was the sappiest story. Everything was bad about it. I complain about lazy writing. It was the epitome of lazy writing. The acting wasn't good. I don't even think Gal Gadot is that good of an actor. I don't find her to be that believable. Like she's beautiful, right? I mean, she's got all, but she's not that good of an actor. I don't know if people praise her for her acting. I've read a couple articles about that, like, oh, the acting was terrible, except for Gal Gadot. She was incredible. I was like, really? Like she was never that good, never that good of an actor. But
all you needed to, if you want to see how bad Gal Gadot's acting was, just think of that stupid video she made during quarantine. Like that song that her and all these celebrities sang from their rich homes that they put out in public, how we're all in this together, this big sappy song, and she was kind of like the face of it. That's how bad it was. Like that was her. She took that. Have you ever seen that video?
No.
Google Gal Gadot quarantine video. She does it with a bunch of celebrities, and they're all singing from their mansions and wherever. I don't know, like this big like kumbaya type of thing, and then you'll see. That's how sappy the movie Wonder Woman 84 was. That's how sappy it was.
It was. I felt like I was watching a rom-com for most of the movie. So like I sat, and even my wife, like I remember I looked at her halfway through and I was like, are you bored? Like, are you bored as much as I am? She was like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. And the thing is, it's 2.5 hours long.
So you guys were bored. Yeah, I was counting on the minutes for it to be over. I couldn't wait for it to end.
Yeah, 2.5 hours long movie. Too long. I'm in it now. I'm committed now. I got to watch it to the end here, and it's like I couldn't wait for it to be over. It was that bad.
So back to lazy writing, to what you were saying. I feel like the writing, the whole story had to be terrible because they were obsessed with the idea of how do we bring Chris Pine back into the story, and it went into this big wish thing, and it was the dumbest time travel stories. Like it was the dumbest story. They brought Chris Pine back in. His character didn't make any sense in the story. And it wasn't even really him. It was like she was looking at another face, but she ends up sleeping with the guy that just because it sounds like the guy. I didn't understand.
And you know what? He might have been the best character.
He was
in
funny
the movie, and he was funny, and he's a good actor. And he had a good role in the first one. I think everybody liked him and Wonder Woman's character. Like they liked them together. So they're like, oh, we got to bring him back. Like he was a big hit with the audience. And I agree with you. The way they brought him back was just really dumb. So dumb.
It goes back to my whole thing is, why do you kill off good characters so early? Like, they always kill off a character without any foresight. Well, how do we bring him back? Like, you killed him off. You didn't have to kill him in the airplane. He could have crashed. She never see. Like, something could have happened, right? But they kill him off, and then she's moping. So that's the other part of the story I don't get. We say in the beginning, she's on an island with all women. These warrior women. There's no men at all. They're all these like badass women. They could probably kick the shit out of any guy. So she meets this guy. She falls in love with him to the point she becomes a sappy mess because she spent maybe 2 months with the guy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, years of never being around a guy, she's around this guy. So, yeah, decades. Yeah,
decades.
And I don't understand. Why? And that was my beef. I said, this is probably like the most sexist thing they could have written. They took a powerful character like Wonder Woman and made her this emotional, weepy mess because of a guy. And I'm like, that's just like typical, stereotypical, like love story crap
Mhm.
that you took the most powerful warrior goddess and you made her like the sappy, mushy teenager. Like, come on. Like, this is like a Disney
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, and she cut herself off from like the rest of the world. Like she didn't date, she didn't do it for like decades.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I also wonder too, what the hell has she been up to since World War One, leading up to the '80s? Like,
Yeah.
did she not try to stop World War II? Like she had like what was she doing? Like nobody knows who she is. Like it's so weird. It didn't make any sense. It almost just seemed like she just. I would have accepted if she just found a way to time travel from World War One to the
Yeah.
'80s, and that was it. And like nobody knows who she is.
You know,
But you know
my
what's
go
funny
ahead.
too is how Chris Pine's character, what's his name, Trevor, no, Steve
Steve.
Trevor,
Yeah.
and he ended up like taking over like the body of some random guy, right? So if you really think about it, isn't that sexual assault in a way? Like they basically slept together, like, and this guy has no clue that this happened. So
Being
when,
used. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and it's just like if you think about it, like, wow, Wonder Woman, like she just sexually assaulted this guy. Sure, the guy wouldn't have minded at all, but
Yeah.
still, like,
Again, I didn't understand. Could she see Chris Pine as who he was, or
no.
she saw that guy right
She
in the
saw
mirror?
that guy. Yeah. Because at one point of the movie, she said, "Well, you don't look like Steve, but all I see is Steve, or whatever." Like I think she was just kind of saying it like she just sees his
So bad.
whatever. It's just it
So bad.
it was too sappy. And you know what else too I hated about the movie? And it's not something I really care all that much about, but it was so crappy. I have to say it. The special effects. Did you think the special effects were good in that movie? I thought they were so bad.
Yeah.
Like when she's flying in the air, and it's like you could tell she's on like
Strings.
yeah, strings, and it's like you get the fan blowing. Like it looked terrible. It looked like what you would see in movies that were made in the '80s. In fact, I read something today. Somebody remember the scene towards the end? She's like running through the street, and it looks a little bit like they called it campy. She looked very campy running through the street.
Mm.
And that they compared it to the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. Before it was Christopher, it was when he was a teenager. Remember that scene when he was like racing the train?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was like trying to race the train, and they had like a side-by-side video of it. And you gotta watch it. I bet you it's on YouTube somewhere. Watch the scene where the original Superman came out, what, in 1980? Like when did that first movie came out? And it looks very similar to how he's running compared to how Wonder Woman is running that they just made in 2020. It was just
Yeah.
like the special effects couldn't be better than that. It was awful.
My first clue that it was a bad movie, like I knew it was in for a bad movie. There was two giveaways. Kristen Wiig, like I didn't send the casting on that one. Like she's a funny, and
Yeah, I like her. I like Kristen Wiig as yeah. I think she's funny too, but not in that role.
that villain role I didn't get. So that was one.
Yeah.
But what I really knew, like this movie, when it time jumped, like it went from the beginning of that marathon that she was competing in. That was good. I liked that. And then they went in, and she was in the mall, and those guys were stealing the artifact, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why she kept on lassoing them, letting them
Yes.
go.
Oh,
and then
yes.
and
Yes.
lasso-
I thought the same thing when I was watching it. I was like,
couldn't
wait a
figure it
minute,
out.
you're Wonder Woman. Why are you like you would tie them up and then swing across the other side, beat up those guys, and then swing back across again, do some more damage to those guys, swing back what are you swinging about? You're Wonder Woman. Doesn't she have super speed?
It was to fill in a void of like, how can we make this look action? And I thought it was the worst. It was the worst thing I could. I'm like, this is terrible. You're able to have your strength is to be able to compete with Superman, and you are lassoing these guys, and you can't knock them out. Like you can't like beat the crap out of them. You have to keep lassoing. I didn't get that part. Like she was just twirling like it was Cirque du Soleil on those stupid on her golden rope thing, and I was like, this is gonna be terrible.
Lasso.
Yeah.
Lasso of truth.
The lasso of truth.
Well,
Terrible.
she has super speed though, right? I mean, she has super? Because I remember the first one. Remember the guy? Actually, I don't even know I remember if it was Wonder Woman or if it was the Justice League movie. But they were robbing the bank, and the guy was trying to go shoot like all the kids in the crowded in the corner, and she ran up and like blocked every bullet, and she
Yeah.
was racing through like she had super speed.
Yeah.
She didn't seem like she had any super speed in this movie. Like, did she lose her super? I know when she did the wish, that was kind of her powers were slowly being taken away. But even before that, like in the mall, like she wasn't showing off her speed. Why?
The
Yeah,
mall scene
I
was
thought
terrible.
the same exact thing. After oh, that was a poor
Yeah.
action scene for Wonder
Yeah.
Woman.
Worst. And again, I love the Wonder Woman character. I'm and Gal Gadot. I thought she did a great job in the first one. Maybe she's not a great actress, or whatever, but she did such a great. She had the look, and I don't know what they were doing. And I part of me was like, if Kristen Wiig's character was sucking Wonder Woman, like I like that. That was probably the best part, was her losing powers. She was gaining. I thought that was probably the best part of the story.
I like
And
that part of the plot.
and
I
they
did.
didn't really,
Yeah.
and they didn't dwell on it long enough. You know, they made her turn into this like a cheetah. I think she turned into a cheetah.
Yeah.
At the very end, and I'm like, you know, that could have, if they found a way to work that in sooner and made that more of the story and got rid of that stupid. Again, I could have probably written this. If you gave me the script, I would have probably scratched out a bunch of crap and then gone.
Yeah.
So I think what coming across is it was a terrible movie.
Awful all around. I can't. There's very few things I liked about it. Very few, and it wasn't enough to change my mind. But you know what else really pissed me off about this movie? Because it was based in the 80s, right? You know I love the 80s. Azar, we've talked about this over and over again. How do you have an 80s movie, a movie based in the 80s, and not have one song from the 80s throughout the
You
movie?
did it?
Not one.
I started zoning out, so I couldn't even tell you if there was.
I actually had to look this up because I'm like looking back thinking, I don't think, was there any 80s music in it? It was based in the 80s, and there was a lot of like 80s clothes, and like it was like it had a lot of references to it, but not one 80s song. And I had to look it up. I read some articles complaining about the same thing, saying, how do you have a movie based in the 80s and not have one song from the 80s in it?
Oh,
that was the cherry on top for me, Azar.
and
I love my 80s music.
from the man of the 80s.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny is that, or sad. It's sad part about it is that Warner Brothers has already approved Wonder Woman 3. Right? They were psyched to brag about it on the day of the release on Christmas. I think the next day they announced it was already approved. You know, they're bringing back the same director that made 2 is making 3. And I don't understand. She was the same director that made the first one. How did she go off the rails as a director?
Because this is what I think. And it's Patty Jenkins who's the director. She did direct the first one, but that's all she did. The second one, she was given too much power. She wrote the story, she directed it, and she produced it. She brought in her own talent. She brought in her own people that she wanted. Like she had the final call on everything. At least the first one, she was in charge of the creative direction and says, okay, I'm going to direct this movie and this is what I want. But she didn't write the script. I don't think she wrote the script. But this second one, she did. And I think the third one, she's going to do it all over again as well. She has full control over everything. So,
and it's going to be a bomb. If Warner Brothers is basically killing Wonder Woman, like it's going to be like a joke, like when you got to like the third or fourth Batman, where people were like, all right, this is becoming a joke. When Arnold Schwarzenegger was Mr. Freeze and all that shit, like it's the worst Batman. You're like Chris O'Donnell was Robin, and was it Val Kilmer? I forget who was the Batman.
George Clooney. George Clooney was the worst.
Oh,
he was
worst
the worst.
Batman.
Yeah, Alicia Silverstone was that girl.
That's the direction Wonder Woman. And I look at, we love Star Wars. My heart broke. She's directing Rogue Squadron. And if she has that same control and creative direction, and she was proud. I read a quote of her. She was proud of Wonder Woman 84 and what they did with it. Mm-hmm. If she's proud of that crap, if you guys think Rogue Squadron for the new Star Wars movie coming out with her directing it is going to be good, well, you better save your money, because you better hope it goes right to Disney Plus, because it is going to be not worth
a disaster.
Toilet paper. It's going to make the Rise of Skywalker look like a great movie. But and sadly, I liked Rise of Skywalker better than Wonder Woman 84.
Oh, yes. Well, I agree with that. Are you talking about Rise of Skywalker or The Last Jedi?
Oh, the Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, all right.
But you know what? I'll even say I would actually sit and watch Last Jedi
I would
before you
too.
get me. Before I would sit and watch Wonder Woman 84.
I would too, and I
You
never
couldn't even
thought I
pay
would
me.
say that.
I
Yeah,
would never. I would never sit through that movie again. There's nothing redeemable. Like
no.
nothing. Like you can't even say, did I miss anything that I could have added to the
It didn't
story?
have one great action scene. It wasn't like nothing. Like there's nothing I could think of other than Chris Pine's character was a little funny. Um, Gal Gadot is beautiful. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know what else. There's
Yeah.
nothing. I mean, now you're just kind of like reaching for stuff to just be like, well, I kind of
Yeah.
like this and that. It was, yeah.
Terrible.
If you
So,
if you haven't seen it, whoever's listening to this podcast, then
don't.
don't waste
Don't
your
even.
time. Don't waste
Yeah.
your
We gave.
time. You might want to
We
just
gave you the
watch it just
highlights.
for the curiosity of it. Yeah, you're gonna watch the opening scene, and then once it gets to the mall scene, that's it. You can just shut
Yeah.
it off. That's
Once
it.
you
You don't
see
have
the
to
mall
watch the
scene,
rest of it.
and just knowing that the main villain try to emulate Nicolas Cage, right there
Yeah.
alone should tell you, it's you might as well put Poe from Con Air as the freaking main villain. And he's going back for his kid. It's all about trying to for his
Yeah.
kid, and this is the same thing. He basically it was all about his kid. It was just so bizarre, and the ending was terrible. Like she was just talking, and I'm like, "That's it.
She used
That's your
her words. Yeah, that was
yeah,
it. That
yeah."
was it. And then the guy redeemed himself, and then the cheetah there redeemed herself. I don't know, everybody in the world redeemed themselves. I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
what the hell? This sappy, like, stupid plot, lazy writing movie. It's,
Here's,
I'm getting mad now,
yeah.
Azar. Now I'm
All
getting
right.
mad. We've vented, I think, enough. We need to move on to the good.
Yeah.
This is the good versus the bad podcast. We've gone through the bad segment of the podcast. Let's
All
go
right.
to the good side.
Let's talk about good writing and a good story, and that keeps building and getting better. We're going to talk about Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is when it ended for me the other night when I finally finished the series, I looked at my wife and I said, I like the writing in the story. It's fun, it's light, and it's so well done in the characters and the villain. Kreese is such a good villain
Yes.
in the show
Yes.
that it gets you hooked. Like you want to see what's happening next. And you almost feel bad for him because of the flashbacks of what made Kreese, but it was so well done. I'll let you start. I'll let you get into it, but I'm just telling you, I was really impressed with it. So
Yeah, and it's funny because Kreese, the guy that plays him, he's actually played in. Like if you look it up in IMDb, he's played in so many movies. I want to say like 160 movies. But you wouldn't think of it because like what else did he play in other than the Karate Kid movies and now Cobra Kai?
yeah,
But he's played in so many. He's been around forever.
yeah.
And he's a good actor, but he's known for his best known for his role is John Kreese. Cobra Kai is great. All 3 seasons have been awesome. It is light. It is fun. You know, it's not so much. It's a little bit. It's not as light, or I should say, as like the Karate Kid movies. Those are movies you could sit and watch with your kids, right? And it's harmless.
Yeah.
Cobra Kai, some of the episodes, you're like, ooh, like my son was watching it, and I kind of had to like look over a couple of times and be like, oh, I hope that joke went over his head,
Yeah.
because it's just some of it is kind of adult humor that little kids won't really get. But I love it. I love that part of it.
But not over the top. I don't think it's so
Not over the top. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But I mean, they use Johnny Lawrence. He doesn't hold back on his on his sayings. Who, by the way, I think is one of the best characters, if not maybe the best character in TV show history. I love his character. He's the prototypical guy that feels like the younger generation. How like a lot of people feel about like the new generation that comes up. They're all a bunch of pansies and they got to toughen up, and and he just doesn't have a filter. So when he speaks, it just makes the show. It makes it so much funnier. But yeah, I did this 3rd season was great. My one nitpick on it though, and this has kind of happened since the 1st season, is how many times are the kids going to become a villain, back to a hero again, back to a villain. I feel like they do that a lot. Like they did it with his son. He was kind of a bad guy in early on in season 1. Then he was kind of like the good guy. Now he's the bad guy, and like they did it with Hawk. Hawk was like back and forth. Like they do it. They do it a lot with a lot of their characters. That's my
I,
only nitpick. They kind of go
I,
back and forth with that too much.
but you know what? I like the changing of the allegiance. Like it's not static. Like this is it. They're like Hawk. Like and I guess I'm on the opposite. I like it because he started off as this goofy, dorky kid and his friends, and all of a sudden you're trying to imply now that he knows karate, he hates everybody, and like he's this like evil. It's like I don't know. Like I found it like it was nice when he went and bailed out his friend. Like he actually felt remorse. Like he went too far and he went back. And I almost like that. But I see what you're saying. But I think it keeps you on your toes because they're kids, and kids change
Yeah.
allegiance like that. And
I do like it with Hawk because I think there was a good like redemption moment there. Although I think it happened too quickly.
yeah,
Like that one moment he was like, oh, now I'm gonna like
yeah.
go back to their side again. I thought it just kind of happened too
But
quick.
I
I
think
don't mind that it happens.
they try to write that he could see
Yeah, there were
he's turning
moments.
like you could see like he's like something's not right, and like he's being phased out, and this kid's coming in and taking his
Right, right,
spot.
right, right. And even after he broke the arm of his friend there, right? And you could tell the look on his face. He was like, oh
Yeah,
shit, like he regretted that, right? I don't mind. I like Hawk's character. I like that they're doing it with him. I just don't like that they're doing it with so many of the
yeah,
characters. I feel
yeah.
like there's a lot of them that are going back and forth. Robbie, like Hawk, um, who was the other guy I mentioned earlier there? They just keep going. I feel like they just keep going back and forth with they're good, they're bad, they're good, they're bad, and it's like I feel like they're kind of running out of ideas now. Where they're like, oh, where can we go with this character? In fact, there was that one girl that wasn't even on the show this year. It was one of her friends, the big girl with the glasses there.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
was in the first two seasons. They didn't bring her back, and they just kind of they wrote it in the script that her parents were so upset with the school fight at the end of season 2, they had to take her out and to another school, so she wasn't on the season. But the writers came out and were like, yeah, we just didn't know where to go with her character anymore, so we didn't
Yeah.
invite her back to season 3. It's like they're kind
I
of
don't
running out of ideas with some of these
I
characters.
can't see how this is going to go past season 4. It is like I heard someone actually it was a Kirk Minahan show. They're not a big fan of the all out school brawl. Like they thought it was kind of silly. Like you had this school brawl at the end of season 2. No one intervened. Like there was like this all out karate war in school, and like all right, it's a little bit of a stretch. And then and I thought it was a big stretch at that. I didn't like how the girl got on the microphone and called out. Like I'm like, all right, like how does that happen in school? That's not going to happen in school. Then she shows up at the kid's house, LaRusso house, with her gang, and I'm
Mm.
like, how many kids, teenagers in high school, are going to show up to someone's house and go and do an all-out brawl? I thought it was kind of weird that it happened there. I'm like, hey,
Yeah,
you
but I
know,
think I think this is where Cobra Kai is you have to look at it as like kind of a fun show that could get away with that, right? It's
yeah.
like it's not realistic,
Oh,
obviously.
it's not a deal breaker.
You
It's
know,
not Wonder Woman 84 kind of thing. But
yeah.
I just thought like, how many times are we gonna have these giant brawls that don't end with anything other than changing allegiances that might occur like with Hawk and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
but hey, overall, it was an entertaining show, and it's so easy to binge watch because
Yes.
they're not actually half-hour episodes like Mandalorian. Like they're actually like on average 45-minute episodes.
Oh, I don't think. I think at the most, I think it was maybe 40 minutes
40
at the
minutes was
most.
the
But a
most.
lot of
Okay,
them were 35 minutes. Like, yeah, it was.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, I watched. It came on New Year's Day. I watched them all on New Year's Day.
that's
I
pretty.
watched.
That's committed. That's
But
committed.
you watch a few, in the morning, and then a few like late. I think we watched like the last 5 episodes all kind of back to back in the evening, like at
Yeah,
night. And like we did it. My kid watched it too. Like he watched
yeah.
every single one of them with us.
Yeah, we watched them at night. We watched them at night, and then my kids we broke it up over 3 days, which is fine.
We're not
Uh,
somebody. We're not. I'm not like somebody we know that actually stayed up at 3 in the morning when it came out, and then watched them all before I even woke up that day. Like
that
now, that's a commitment.
that is a man that
That's a
really likes
commitment.
the show. But it is a show, and I like some of the debates, um, like who is more like better looking. Russo's wife,
yeah.
or Allie. I like the. You know what? It's funny to take that out of the show and have you can actually have some interesting debates. I know your feelings are for Allie.
I was gonna say Elizabeth Shue.
Yeah,
She just keeps coming back into my life, Azar. I don't know.
yeah. And
With the boys and now the Cobra Kai and
but you know what's funny is that writing her in was, I think, just to get her back into the show, just for like
oh yeah.
because I didn't understand the point of it. Like, it really, you could have left it out and it would have really changed the storyline. And I didn't get the whole. Dude, he went back to Japan, and by strange coincidence, the one girl he saved is running a major corporations. All right, so put your, I'm like, all right. So there is a little bit of lazy writing, and I like they introduced the villain from Karate Kid too. And
Yeah.
I liked how he was staring him down, and I liked how he taught him something new, like how to be on the offensive. I liked it, but I'm like, it's so kind of weirdly written. Like, it just seems like you're
but
writing it.
so I I think all that is fan service, right? I don't
Exactly. That's why
I don't care about any of that stuff, right? I mean, it's like they're just trying to bring back the Karate Kid nostalgia. They're trying to bring back every single character, even the music. Once in a while, a song breaks out, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that was the song that they played in the second movie or the third movie." And it's like, and again, even a show that was taken from a movie that was based in the 80s, and they're bringing the 80s music back into this.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder Woman couldn't do that.
No.
I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to Wonder Woman. Let's just
Favreau needs to go and direct Wonder Woman 3.
Yes, he needs to save. He needs to go and save that franchise. Yeah. You're right.
It's gonna be what is it gonna be called? Wonder Woman 2002, or like why 84? Why is it 2004? I don't know. It's like
if they bring back Chris Pine somehow once again, I don't even know. Like, how do you explain that? Like, you got to bring him back again somehow. He comes back again. Right. Anyway, exactly. Our anger is just building up.
It's hard to suppress it because you watch a good show like Cobra Kai. Thank God, it would have ruined my vacation break because I was hyped up for Christmas for Wonder Woman. I watched it when it came down, and thank God for Cobra Kai to save my Christmas vacation, like that time off, because at least I watched something other than the football games, because we're in this season right now. Thank God. Like, I was like, how could you be so stupid and ruin it? Mm-hmm. But Cobra Kai was, again,
it was entertaining. It's silly fun. It's silly fun, and I love that. I love all
exactly. That. Even with the corny like add-ins of like these bringing back these nostalgic characters, and you got to get a little bit of disbelief on, but. I like where it's going. It's going to go to a head with this big final tournament. I think they're drawing the line like, whoever wins gets control of the karate, and the other ones have to like close their dojos down. So,
and the Terry Silver character, he's going to come back in the.
I didn't know that. Season. Okay.
The guy from Karate Kid 3, because he's the guy. He's actually the true owner of the dojo, the Cobra Kai dojo.
Oh, the kid with the ponytail?
The guy, yeah, not the younger kid that Daniel fought at the end, but it was his sensei or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you go back and watch like the beginning of Karate Kid 3, there is a scene when John Kreese goes to see him in his mansion, right? The guy's like wealthy, and he goes to see him and he goes, "Oh, I need to ask you for a favor," and the guy says something along the lines of, like, "Hey, I owe you anything. You've saved my ass so many times back in Vietnam." Like, and when you watch Cobra Kai, you piece the two together. Like, the guy that was in the cage with him is Terry Silver.
Yeah, my son actually called it out. My youngest son actually called that out, and he goes, "Oh, they're bringing that guy back." And I was like, I can't remember. I don't even know if I watched all of Karate Kid 3. It's been so long. Yeah. I don't remember it as well as 1 and 2. So I was like, wow, that's a good point. Thank you. So it's interesting you bring that up. So but
that goes back to the whole nostalgia. That's fan service. That's, do they have to bring him back for season 4? Not really, but people want to see him. And I'm sure that other guy that Daniel fought in season 3 there, I'm sure they're going to bring him back too somehow. Like, they want to bring back every single main character from those Karate Kid movies. Unfortunately, what would be great is if they somehow found a way to CGI back in
Oh,
Mr.
I was just gonna
Miyagi.
say it. You just read my mind. I was gonna say, how could they have not CGI'd Miyagi back in, or other than the clips?
That would
Oh,
be some big. Well, now that it's on Netflix, maybe I don't know what the viewership was compared to when it was on YouTube, but
oh, you read my mind. I was just gonna say that.
if I don't know how many people watched The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, and they had. Well, then again, that's Disney. They have unlimited pockets, or yeah, they could just spend whatever to CGI Luke Skywalker back in. But
Yeah.
do they have the kind of money like
Oh, Netflix has
the
the money.
studio there? Well,
Yeah.
is it Netflix now, or is it? Well, I don't know how the whole thing works, right? Because
No,
it used to be on
Netflix took it
YouTube.
over. Netflix took it over. They're funding it now.
So now they're funding it. So Netflix, right? They got all the money. So if they could
Yeah.
spend the money and just somehow CGI Mr. Miyagi back in, that
Yeah.
would be phenomenal. Maybe he comes back as a ghost. If you really want to go all out silly, he comes back as like the Force ghost. That would be insane.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in the fight scene with the daughter, she thinks back to not her own dad talking to her. She thinks of Miyagi. Like when the picture is like smashed and it's Miyagi's face, and I'm like, that inspired you? You didn't even know the guy. Like all of a sudden,
Did she know? I think she did when she was younger, right? Because he was still.
I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think he was still kind of alive
Was
throughout
he?
her childhood or whatever, and then he died somewhere along the way. But
Okay. I don't know. I just thought it was funny. Like she's like the picture of Miyagi. Like as soon as you notice how the picture gets smashed, you're like, oh shit, now it's on because she's smashed the Miyagi, like the Yoda. Yeah, Miyagi's
yeah,
like Yoda,
yeah,
of Karate Kid. But it was a great show, and it was such a light show, and we can laugh about it because I thought it was so much fun. And again, I don't agree with you on Shu. I think LaRusso's mom is probably better looking. She was
oh,
better looking.
I didn't say. Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I'd go Mrs. LaRusso all the way. I'm
Yeah.
just saying Elizabeth Shue has that, appeal to her. By the way, Elizabeth Shue was in a great Nicolas Cage movie, Leaving Las Vegas. She played a hooker. I don't know if have you seen it.
No, it's Nicolas Cage. I don't watch anything
I was gonna
other than
say
Con Air.
this is this was back when Elizabeth Shue, looked really good. I still think she looks good for
She looks the
her
same.
age.
When they did
Yeah,
that flashback of her as a like young girl, a teenage girl, she must have been in her 20s probably when they were doing it. I was like, man, she looks exactly the same. It's
yeah.
creepy.
And you know what's crazy is Ralph Macchio. His
Yeah. The
he
ageless.
he looks. Did you know that he is younger? No, he is older than the guy who played Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid movies.
Yeah.
Like
I
he's
heard that too.
older. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? Like you think of Mr. Miyagi in those movies, you're like, oh, this old man.
Yeah.
He plays, and his wife, because he looks so young, Mrs. LaRusso, they had to bring her in to play his wife. She's like 18 years younger than he is.
Is she
He's like,
really?
yeah, he's like 56 or 57, and she's like 40 or something like that.
You
Yeah.
know what's funny? I'm glad you said it because I remember her in The Big Bang Theory as Sheldon's sister, and
Hmm.
she looks so much younger. So I wonder if they're aging her a little to kind
Maybe
of.
they make her look a little bit older to
Yeah,
to
because
kind of,
she looks like she aged. I'm like, I know
yeah.
she wasn't that long ago in the episodes, but she does look older to me. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm like, man, she looks so
Yeah.
much different on The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's like a 17, 18-year different age difference
yeah,
between the two. But when you watch it, you think they're similar age just because
yeah,
he still looks so young.
yeah. Well, then you got to think about the Spanish mom too. She's got to be in that big debate too.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Whatever her name is. I mean, nobody knows
Hey,
what her name is.
I
We
don't even
just
pay
know her as
attention.
Robbie's mom.
Yeah, Robbie's mom. Anyways, all right, let's wrap up. If you haven't watched Cobra Kai, dude, it's a great show. You're probably one of the only few Americans that it's like not watching the Tiger King. Everybody's watched it at this point. You got to watch it, and most people
Yeah,
that we know have binge watched it. So
right.
I
Right.
don't think we reveal too much of like the plot or anything. So you're going in fresh. You'll love it. Definitely
Yeah.
watch it. Wonder Woman 4. Don't waste your time.
Yeah,
Totally.
if you haven't watched Cobra Kai by now, you're in the same category as somebody who hasn't watched Indiana Jones
Yeah.
in their lifetime.
Just give up.
It
Yeah.
just that's just unheard of. I
Yeah.
just don't understand who would not watch has not watched Indiana Jones. Who somebody that we know Azar,
Yeah.
and the person listening, they know who they are.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad when you haven't seen Indiana Jones.
That is equivalent of like being someone that hates apple pie, wants to burn the American flag. Like, you have to be like so anti-American or in like hateful. Like, you must hate yourself. Who doesn't watch Indiana Jones? Like, that is like such a classic American character, and you don't watch it. Like, it's like never watching Rocky. Like, that's how stupid it is. It's like if you go up to someone and say, "Hey, you ever see Rocky?" Never heard of him. Never watched the movie. How do you never watch Rocky? Right?
It
And
is
that's how crazy it is
strange.
to say, "Hey, have you ever watched Indiana Jones?" No, never. How do you like Star Wars? How do you like Harrison Ford? How
Yeah.
do you like George Lucas and never watch an Indiana Jones movie? It's insane.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. It
You know,
is. It's bizarre.
and that's why any credibility when he talks about movies, that in the back of my mind, of course, he's the one that liked The Last Jedi, so that just tells you he'll watch Last Jedi, but you tell him, hey, just sit and watch Indiana Jones. I'm telling you, you'll love it. Nah,
Maybe he'll like Wonder Woman.
you know what? If anybody will give it a good review, it'd probably be him. I don't know. I thought it was a meaningful story. So, anyways, so speaking of that, let's move into our favorite topic, fantasy football. The season's over, and it's time now to pay. Fantasy football doesn't go away. You're always watching moves. Like, there's some big moves today. We just heard that the Patriots general manager might be going to Houston now, so that might change things for Deshaun Watson's future. Of course, I'm a little not the general manager, like the lead scout is Houston. I forget what the hell is his name? Oh, I'm drawing.
The GM.
Not a GM. Belichick's the GM of the Patriots, but
Oh, his top scout. You say like his.
yeah. I'm drawing a blank on his name before the call.
Not Casario.
Casario. Yes.
Okay.
Nick Casario, right?
Yeah. What is that?
He's their lead scout,
director
right?
of player personnel.
Yeah. And they just Ian Rappaport just announced today that Houston is going to be trying to bring him over. They haven't finalized the deal, but they're bringing him over. So that's interesting. So that is interesting to me because the Patriots haven't done a really good job with their roster and personnel the last couple of years, and they're all pointing the finger. This is Belichick, and that's why he's leaving. It's because Belichick is just getting way out of control. But it'll be interesting if it actually benefits Watson because he's such a talented quarterback. If he can get someone that builds a solid team around him, I think he's going to be a dangerous quarterback next year. Like I would see his value. Keep an eye out for the acquisitions and movements.
Sure. Although I think they're in rough shape to rebuild anytime soon because they don't even have a first-round draft pick, or I don't think they even have a second-round draft pick. Houston doesn't.
Yeah, but they can make some free agent moves. I think they're going to blow up the team. They have to.
They could. Yeah, but I'm just saying in free agency, they have the number 3 overall pick, and it's going to Miami because they lost it in a trade that they made together. Imagine that.
For their lineman. Wasn't the lineman?
Yeah, it was a lineman that they traded, but they got their first round pick. Who knew that Houston was going to be that bad this year? And number 3 overall pick goes right to Miami.
I unlike New England, I think Watson is a draw if you're a young receiver, free agent.
Oh sure, yeah. I don't know how much money they have under the cap, but like it'll be tough for Casario to do much this first season, depending on what their cap space is. They don't have a lot of draft picks, so we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, they have. Will Fuller they got to re-sign too, right? He's a free agent.
Yeah,
they got to figure out what they want to do. That so
he's not healthy. He never stays healthy. Well, now that with the steroids thing, if you can't do steroids, he was only healthy most of the year because he was on steroids. Yeah. Who knows? Supposedly, I don't know if he was when he was taking or what he was taking exactly, but when you get substance abuse, not substance, performing enhancing drugs, it's never a good sign. Because look at Edelman after he got busted for it. He had a rough time staying healthy consistently. I felt like after he got busted for that, I always felt like he was always missing time. But that's just I have to do a little research. But I wanted to talk about the running backs because I thought Derrick Henry was going to be a lock. Like when we talk about what he did last year, I know you mentioned you weren't a big fan of his running, but I think people were going to take him as a top 4 pick next year.
Oh, absolutely. Top 2. He'll definitely go 1 or 2 for sure.
And just like CMC, I'm going to tell you right now, he shouldn't go in the top 5. There's no way he'd make sense going in the top 5 because he did the curse of breaking a 2,000-yard rushing season. I just feel that is a ticking time bomb of just like CMC had a 2,000 all-purpose yard season.
Yeah.
Now you have a guy that rushed. That's all. He's one-dimensional. He's a rushing running back. That's all he does.
Yeah.
And he went over 2,000 yards. And historically, it's not in his favor to be that he's going to actually produce at any level of what you expected the year before from him. So I think if you're a top 4 pick, if you take Derrick Henry, you're going to be as disappointed as the person who took CMC despite our warnings. Because if you listen to our podcast, they would have been warned. They didn't listen. Of course, that's what happens when you outsource your person to draft for you. I understand that could be a problem. But if you listen to our podcast, you would have known not to take CMC as your first pick. But that's just my opinion on it.
We did talk about that before the season, and we were in agreement. It's kind of like, how do you pass that up, right? You get CMC. It's like you gotta just take the risk there. It's a similar situation with Derrick Henry. I had him on my team this year. I love Derrick Henry. I just don't see, because he's not part of the passing game, it all kind of worked out for him this year. I've seen enough games where he would run, he would get stuffed, and then he would break one for 50 yards. And then at the end of the game, you're like, oh, he had 100 yards and a touchdown. And then there was those games where he really had the openings where he ran for 200-plus yards. He had 5 games, I think, where he ran for over 200 yards this year. So it all adds up. It's great. He's a powerful runner. When they get to the goal line, he's going to punch it in. But he'll be a year older. He had almost 400 carries this year. I think it was 374, I believe, was the number. He had a lot of carries. They said they wanted to target him in the passing game a little bit more this year. I don't think they really did. Maybe they tried and it just didn't work out. But he's just he would be the caveat for me. For me, if I had the first overall pick, I wouldn't take him. And I love Derrick Henry. I wouldn't take him first overall. You said you wouldn't take him top 5. That would be too much of a risk for me. If I had the 5th pick, because none of us are getting the top 4 picks. So, but if we somehow manage with the 5th pick,
I'll give you the 5th because
and he's there, I would absolutely take him.
Derrick Henry was number 1. Alvin Kamara was number 2. And a wild card with Alvin Kamara is where's Drew Brees? Do you think they're signing Drew Brees back next year, or is he retiring? That's huge because Taysom Hill changed the dynamic for Kamara. I felt like when Hill was the quarterback, Kamara's numbers went down, and then when Brees came back, Kamara shot right back up and was like amazing. Dalvin Cook is 3, Taylor is 4, Jones is 5, Montgomery is 6, Robinson is 7, right? And then Jacobs is 8. That's how it. And Chubb is 9, and Hunt finishes off the year at 10. Kenyon Drake finished in the top 12 in fantasy points, believe it or not, as a running back, which is amazing. Because he came again. He
had a strong second half.
That's what I mean. He's going to drive people crazy because everybody's going to look at his numbers in the magazines next year and realize his first half sucked. It was his second half. He exploded again. Are you willing to invest? And that's a tangent. But when I look at the top 5, I feel bad for the people who are the top 4 picks. Like CMC is not on the list, but he's probably a top 4 pick, right? Is Saquon Barkley? Is Saquon Barkley a top 4?
Probably not.
Okay.
I would not take him.
What about Elliott?
I would. I mean,
if
knowing
Dak
what
Prescott
we know
comes
now.
Back.
Yeah, knowing what we know.
Comes back.
Yeah, because anything could happen. We don't know what happens, right? If Dak comes back, they might sign a great free agent offensive run blocker, right? In Dallas, they might bring in another receiver. You don't know what ends up happening from now until the start of the season. But knowing what we know now, do I take a risk on Ezekiel Elliott? Maybe not at 4, but at 5, I'd maybe take him at 5.
Over Henry?
No, probably not.
Give me your top 5 then. Give me your top 5 then.
In that order?
Yeah, give the audience your top 5. Who, if you were to get a top 5 right now, based on what you know, and I'm going to I'll say Dak Prescott gets re-signed, but we don't know if he's healthy. He's just re-signed. That's all you know. He got re-signed, and Drew Brees is going to give it one more year.
Okay.
Who are your top 5?
My top 5, I would say maybe if Drew Brees comes back, I would say Alvin Kamara.
Number
1? Probably number 1, yep.
Overall? Okay.
Yep. Dalvin Cook, number 2.
Okay.
Then maybe I would go Henry 3. I think at that point there, it's like there's too much risk with everybody else that I see out there that I would consider. Who'd you say Taylor was 4th?
Or it's in the rankings based on fantasy points. Taylor was 4
He
at
was really
216,
4th.
and Aaron Jones had 211 fantasy points for the season. There was a drop off from Dalvin Cook at 293, and
That's why,
Taylor.
because Jonathan Taylor had 253 yards and 2 touchdowns in his last game.
Again, but this is just go if rankings based on. And Taylor is an up and coming running back. I mean, he is.
He is. Yeah. It's. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 4th. Maybe I would stick with Ezekiel Elliott because he's the.
So you're dropping CMC to 5?
Oh, I forgot about CMC. Sorry. No, CMC would go 4th. Yeah,
Okay.
CMC would go 4th, and then Ezekiel Elliott might go 5. Yeah.
Okay.
No, CMC is definitely in the top 4 for sure.
I was gonna say. So Saquon Barkley is probably going to be in the top 10, most likely.
Maybe.
Oh, maybe. Well, there's not a lot of names that are.
No, but I think I would
sexy.
take Nick Chubb before I take Barkley. I like Nick Chubb, even with Kareem Hunt there. I think they're building that offense around the run game, and there's enough to go around for both those guys. I think Nick Chubb is great. And then you start sprinkling in there like before the end of the draft. Like I don't know, would I take Devontae Adams before I take Saquon Barkley? I probably would. Probably take Tyreek Hill before I take Saquon Barkley.
Wow, so the receivers are making it in the top 10.
Yeah, I think so.
Next year.
I think those two guys. I actually like Josh Jacobs. I think they're trying to build the team around him as well, and he gets a lot of opportunities. He gets a lot of carries. I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, he might be 2nd in attempts, right? So Derrick Henry had 378 attempts. Dalvin Cook had 312, so he was 2nd, and Josh Jacobs was 3rd, 273. So I like the volume. I want to take a running back that early where he's going to get a lot of volume.
And he had a quietly good year. Like he had 12 rushing touchdowns, and I think he had no receiving touchdowns. So just 12 overall, but over 1,000 yards of rushing. Had some health issues, I think, here and there. But with a weird COVID year, who knows? I think it's tough to really gauge people's health in a year where they didn't really have an off season to get in shape and work out. So overall, not a bad. Yeah, there's going to be names like Montgomery, Robinson. I don't know if I'm going to believe the hype on them. Drake's going to be in there. He's going to be in the top 12 discussion.
Top 12 overall?
He might be.
No.
Well, that's how he fit. Well, maybe not in the top 12. You're right, because I'm forgetting you have Barkley. There's some names that are missing.
Yeah, and then at that point too, like you still got some receivers. Like I'll take Kelsey the way he.
Oh no, I'm talking about his running backs. Like he might finish.
Top 12 running backs. Oh, okay. Yeah. Then maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe you're right. Then it would be.
Which is amazing 12. To think. So I think in the top, if you have a top 4 pick, there's a lot of question marks that could change. Because if Drew Brees retires, I don't know if Alvin Kamara is number 1 again.
No,
as the number 1 running back.
No, that changes everything. If he does retire, and that could end up being how he does this year. If he wins the Super Bowl, they have a good enough team to compete. He might retire. That might be it. Yeah. If they get close, they lose in the Super Bowl, maybe he comes back and gives it one more shot. I don't know.
And in Elliott, it's the same thing. If they don't have Dak Prescott and they tell me they're going to go in with Andy Dalton and there was no significant changes, they have great receivers. But if they don't have any significant changes in the offense, I don't know if I believe Elliott with Andy Dalton is going to be that's who they go with.
Yeah, I mean,
and Andy Dalton's not terrible. He did okay for them, but I felt like Elliott just fell off the map. But their defense was terrible, so they had to play catch up. So Dallas has to make some significant changes. If I was a top 4 person picking, I'd want to see their defense get beefed up. I want to see Dak Prescott come back. And I don't know about other weapons because I don't think the offensive line was terrible. I just felt like they were so far behind. They had to throw. Took Elliott out of the game. But, yeah, if those two things don't happen, I'm like, I don't know if Elliott slides.
Well, and this goes back to Derrick Henry, right? The Tennessee Titans were just good enough on defense to stay in games, and Tannehill played just well enough. And A.J. Brown, when he came back, he was one of the best receivers. Like, he missed the first, 2 games, but as soon as he came in, he was unstoppable.
Yeah, he was great.
If next year, if one of those things falters, if Tannehill doesn't play well, if their defense takes a step back, like if A.J. Brown gets hurt, whatever, like whatever the case is, now they're trying to play catch up and they're behind. Derrick Henry's out of the game. He's
Yeah.
out, and it's like if you're watching the game and Tennessee's that far behind and you have Derrick Henry, then you might as well just forget it. Like they're not going to put him in. They're not going to put him in. Now, there was a game earlier this year where they did fall behind like 3 touchdowns, and they started to throw the ball. They got close enough to the end zone. They gave it to Derrick Henry. He scored. Then the next play, I think there was a turnover. Then they gave the ball to Derrick Henry, and he broke one for like 60 yards, and now they're right back in the game, and that could always happen. But it's just, if that never happened, like if Tannehill didn't drive the ball down the field, Derrick Henry would have had a miserable game that game. So that's what I would want to avoid, having the first overall pick. I would say buyer beware with Derrick Henry.
Yeah. So there's so the top 4 picks, just because like in our league, we always reward, it's like a reward. We help those who don't make the playoffs, so they get a top 4 pick in our league. That's why we're referencing top 4. Like, why are we focusing on that? Because it's just how we designed our league, is if you don't make the playoffs, we give you like a little boost, to give you a chance next season to give it like a step up, to give you better odds of making the playoffs the following year. But those top 4 picks have so much uncertainty. I can see all 4 being busts because of Henry's wear and tear. Drew Brees, even if he comes back, maybe he's just a year older and more banged up. Mm-hmm. And, maybe he doesn't last the season and you end up with the banged up Kamara because they have to lean on him and he doesn't make it. There's a lot of variables. Like Elliott has his variables. So a lot of things could mess up your top 4 pick. Look at this season's top 4 picks. I mean, a lot of them were a disaster outside. I think Dalvin Cook was outside the top 4, right? I think he got 5th with Dalvin Cook.
He was 5th, yeah.
And you had Henry on 4th, right?
Yeah.
And I think Derrick Henry was the only one out of the top 4 that finished the season, right? Because CMC didn't finish, Barkley didn't finish. Elliott finished, but he was...
Yeah, he had a very down year. Very down year. But, yeah, like all those 3 were busts. All 3 of those top 3. The ones that everybody just kind of, was expecting to have these big years. Yeah, it happens a lot. It happens every year. We see it. Yeah. You see those top few picks. You're like, all right. And once in a while, a player stays healthy and he performs and he does great. But we see it all too often. That's not it's too much of a risk. Now, there's going to be a guy next year that just comes out of nowhere. It might be James Robinson, who, by the way, James Robinson had a great year this year, and the Jacksonville Jaguars were 1-15. How do you still put up those kind of numbers that he did on a 1-15 team? I don't know. That was kind of bizarre to me.
But wasn't CMC on the same team? Like, just terrible record, but he was just still putting up mountains of yards and points.
I don't think they were that bad. I don't think they were 1-15 bad, but they
were bad. They were bad. I mean, they were like well under 500 teams. But Robinson, I would say, was the biggest surprise of 2020 in the fantasy, right? He was an amazing running back that you probably picked up off the waiver wire, and if you got him on the waivers, he probably helped your team get to the playoffs.
I don't think he wasn't drafted. I don't think he was drafted.
So he's that one running back that emerges out of nowhere.
Yeah. But there'll be somebody like Drake, like there'll be Melvin Gordon, like maybe he comes back next year and ends up like exploding like this. You just don't know. You don't know. Maybe it's Ronald Jones, maybe Ronald Jones. Now they realize like, hey, we actually have a decent running back here that could play. Maybe it's your boy there, Antonio Gibson. Maybe he comes back and he stays healthy and he ends up having a monster year that next year. Those could be like the top 4 picks or not picks, but top 4. They rank in the top 4 by season's end, and we'll be looking back being like, hey, everybody's drafting Cook and Kamara and Henry again and CMC, and it's like they end up all faltering, and it's these new running backs, these new kids coming up.
If Gibson stayed healthy, I think he, as a rookie, he would have finished really well despite having really no quarterback. And if Washington is able to find a quarterback in the offseason, I think that's a dangerous team. You know who killed me watching, and it always happens in fantasy? I was watching Hollywood Brown turn it on. Like the last 3 weeks, like I'm out of the playoffs, and I drafted this guy, held him all season, did nothing for me all season. And every time I watched a highlight of Lamar Jackson, because now all of a sudden he's throwing the ball, throwing it effectively, it's all the Hollywood Brown. And I'm like, what the hell happened? That was what I expected all season, and
Yeah.
it didn't happen until like the last 3 weeks of the year. I hate that's the stuff in fantasy that no matter
Yeah.
how much planning and stuff you think you got it, I got this guy, he's gonna be a sneaky play for me, and then he
Yeah.
waits and it's gonna suck because you're gonna look at his stats next year and people are gonna be like, someone's gonna draft him early because they're gonna look at his last few weeks and say, oh, look how good
Terrible
Hollywood
number.
Brown is,
Right.
and
Look
it's
how
gonna be
we
the same,
finished.
and it's gonna be the same jackass experts that with Joe Mixon. They're always going to look at some last few weeks of numbers and tell you, this is why I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. Really?
There's another Joe. There's another guy. Is Joe Mixon top 12 running back?
Oh, I don't think so. No.
He
Never
might have,
again.
He
Never
might be
again.
the forgotten man here in the running back rankings.
I can't even imagine going back to him. Oh my God, no. But it's going to be interesting, but it's something to look forward to. But we'll be talking about it now. I think next we'd like to talk about quarterbacks because I think the quarterback landscape has dramatically changed.
Yeah.
Josh Allen just rocked the world of fantasy and what's I'm going to mispronounce his name, from San Diego. Herbert,
Justin
right?
Herbert. Yeah. He
looked really good.
Yeah, he was really good. I think he broke a rookie record for passing yards, touchdowns. But yeah, those guys. He's going to be.
And then Cincinnati, Burrow.
Burrow, yeah, if he comes back, he had a tough injury.
Yeah,
really, really tough injury too. But if he comes back in time, Rodgers redeemed himself. He might be MVP this year. Mahomes is still great. Josh Allen.
Brady.
Got those three. Good. Brady is still there. Lamar Jackson could come back, right? He could have a little bounce back here. He finished strong this year.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson's still good, again, depending on what Houston does. So, yeah, there could be a good Kyler Murray, right? He's still developing. He had some ups and downs this year, but overall he had a good year. So,
is this his third year? Is Kyler Murray going into his third year?
His second, I believe.
No, next year will be his third year.
His third year next year, yeah.
And that's usually like the breakout year for a lot of players is that third year. So I wouldn't be shocked if Kyler Murray is in the top 4, top 5 next year easily. As a quarterback.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent.
And then, you got Dak Prescott. If he comes back, he was putting up big numbers.
Yeah, I just think it's injury. I'm just nervous. I don't know how.
The injury looked bad, but yeah, I mean, he might not come back to start the season, I don't think. But same thing with Burrow. Burrow had a similar.
Yeah,
it's just shame. He had the Joe Theismann snap in his leg.
Poor kid.
Very similar.
Poor kid.
Yeah,
he looked great too. He was fun to watch. And even Baker Mayfield is showing some life. Like, it seems like they get rid of Odell Beckham and there's more life in the. Odell Beckham. I want to wrap up the podcast, but Odell Beckham, man, I think he's like a cancer on teams, man. Like, teams get better when he's gone.
Yeah.
You see more dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
He's not on the field. I don't know how that's possible, but I feel like he's such a drama queen.
He's done. The days of him being a great. He's like what Des Bryant was. Right, like towards the end of his career, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's Des Bryant. Like he had the name, and he never did anything. His last 2 years in the league, and it was just like that's how OBJ is now. He's just done. He had his time
Bryant
for a few
scored
years.
as many touchdowns. Didn't Des Bryant score a couple touchdowns this season with Lamar Jackson?
Oh, did he? Yeah, he did. He came back. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Des Bryant.
I think he scored 1. I thought it was 1.
Was it 1? All right, I'm checking. I'm checking right now.
Because maybe you're thinking of two like Antonio Brown, right? Antonio Brown's another one where
2 receiving touchdowns.
He did have 2. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, 2 for Des Bryant. He's on his way. He's on his way back.
He's sleeper for next year.
Oh yeah.
But can you imagine? They still utilized him. I'm shocked to say that. But Odell Beckham had 1 rushing touchdown and 3 receiving touchdowns. So imagine that.
I think it was 1 game. Odell Beckham had 2 receiving touchdowns and 1 rushing.
Yeah.
It was like in 1 game he did it.
So just think about that. He scored just double of what Des Bryant did. Des Bryant's been out of the league for for how many years now? 2, 3 years?
Yeah.
That's sad. So it's safe
but you do know next year OBJ, he'll be drafted. He won't be drafted high, but somebody in the middle of the draft will be like, oh, OBJ lasted till the 8th round. I can't believe I got OBJ. And they're going to think like they got a steal. They're going to be like, oh, I can't believe I have OBJ on my team. Yeah. And they're going to drop him by week 3.
And you know,
they're gonna realize like, oh, this guy sucks now.
and my prediction is you're going to be that jackass, and that way you can go back and say, I told you on the podcast he's going in the 8th round, and you're the one that took him. So just so you can prove, so you can say, I told you.
I'm going to make a note. I might just take him in the 7th round, just because you're going to take him in the 8th round before I take him, because you're going to want him.
I want him to. Well, yeah, I'll take him in the 5th round just to prove you wrong. Like, no, he went early. Yeah, that'll be spiting myself. I'll show me.
Yeah, and then everybody listening to this podcast, now they're going to take him in the 4th round. Before you know it, it'll go in the 3rd round again.
And he'll be a jackass pick for 2021.
Yes, he will. Yes, he will.
All right. Well, this was a full podcast. We gave a lot of content, and hopefully you found it helpful. When you're going and streaming different things, we try to make it light and fun. And everybody's probably wondering, where's our 3rd man? Why we haven't had our boy Jarvis? I don't think he had a chance to watch Wonder Woman, so we didn't want to really bring him in and have him kind of get stumped with it. So, but we'll have our 3rd man back in. I know people are missing him.
Well, if he listens to this podcast, then he won't watch Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
he'll never watch Wonder Woman.
We'll save him, but yeah.
If he truly values our opinion, he will not watch Wonder Woman. If he does, then you know he's not a true friend. He doesn't believe in our.
Oh, that's pretty harsh.
He doesn't believe in us. Well, you know, if he's listening, he better not watch Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Well, and
just take our word for it.
Yeah. No, you know what? I'm sure he's happy. If after listening to this, he'll be happy he did not watch it, and we spared him the suffering that we had to sit through. Because God knows he suffers enough, that poor guy.
It could just end up being now, like, after listening to this podcast, people will want to watch Wonder Woman because now they're curious to know, like, how bad is it? Like, they want to, you know, it's like those movies, those really cheesy movies that are so bad that they're good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you watch them, you're like, oh, that was so bad, but it was so bad, it was so good.
No.
Maybe.
No, because you know the new Ghostbusters was a bad movie, but you can watch it. It was okay. Like if it's on TV, it's not. If you see Wonder Woman 84, you are skipping past. You're not even bothering to stop to watch it. It's that bad. Like I said, I would rather watch The Last Jedi.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
That's going out on a limb.
I would rather watch a Nicolas Cage movie.
And
watch The Beautiful Gal Gadot in WW84. That's how bad that movie is. So yes, you know what? I'm going to go stream one of his jackass movies and just suffer through it. Because I actually watched Speed from Keanu Reeves and thought, geez, that was a great movie compared to WW84. I do like the movie Speed. That's probably one of my few Keanu Reeves movies that I do enjoy. That's a tangent. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up the podcast because we're running long. Hope you enjoyed it. We're trying to pick up the frequency. The holiday's over. As more content comes out, we'll definitely want to be sharing our views on it. But again, we're at the mercy of content. Hopefully new things are coming out so we can kind of talk about it, because other than that, I'm sure you don't want to listen to us rant about nothing. Or we could just get me drunk and just have him go on a podcast for an hour and just go off on our 3rd man Jarvis. So that's another.
If that happens, we'll go 3 hours, Azar. 3 hours.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Give us your thoughts. Give us your reviews. And we'll catch you next time.